In this capability, you're able to blend different new hardware models. These new models include the Observer 1000, the VR9700, and the VR10500. Note that this does not include the VR9500. However, the VR9500 can be connected with other VR9500s in ObserVIEW. So if you were to have two 9500s that you want to connect into an 8-channel system, you are able to do that in the Live Analyzer. Regarding the new hardware units, you are able to do the same thing, so VR9700s with VR9700s and so on, but you also can pair them with each other. So the VR10500 can pair with the VR9700 and so on. In addition to this, when you connect to these groups, they do save by default, so that if you disconnect for the day and come back the next day, they should still be available for you to easily reconnect to and start right back up. Some restrictions, in addition to the VR9500 that I mentioned earlier, is this is only in Live Analyzer and not in modal at this time. In addition to this, if you have partial channel count systems, you are not able to use those units. So if you have a 10500 that is an 8-channel 10500, you are not able to combine these with other units. At this time, let's open up ObserVIEW and walk you through this connection process. So this is the screen that you first see when you open up ObserVIEW. On the top left, if you go to Connect to Device and then select the Configure Hardware button, it will open this window. In this window, as you can see, this is the saved feature that I was talking about. In the past, I've already connected to these two units together, so they're in this selected grouping box. Let's just remove those for the sake of showing the feature. This is what you would see. In my case, I have 3 available units to choose from, but for me, next to me, I only have 2 units that I want to connect to, a VR9700 and a VR10500. As you can see, that's these 2 right here. So let's add the 10500 and the 9700 by clicking this plus button on the right side to add the device to the hardware group. Now let's say, instead of having the VR10500 first, being 1 through 16, let's say I want the VR9700 to be channels 1 through 4, and then have the 10500 be 5 through 20. To do that, I can simply drag and drop, and you can do that with more than 2 boxes. It just makes it easy for you to mix and match and customize how you want to have those controllers numbered. Once you have it put in the configuration that you want, you can click Connect. And it may have some firmware that will need to update, and that might take a little bit, but as soon as that's done, it should connect right up. First, let's open up the Inputs Configuration window, which is an all-new input configuration window, completely different and overhauled from previous versions. As you can see, we have a section for both inputs or a tachometer if you have that selected, where you can select different tach mode types. In our case, we only have some accelerometers selected, so we'll go to this Inputs heading. And you can minimize that as well. In my case, I have 3 sensors connected to my system. I have 1 on the first channel of the 9700 and 1 on channel 1 and 1 on channel 2 of the 10500, which correspond to channel 5 and 6 of the system. This first feature I'm going to show you is one of our multi-select features, which allows you to very easily turn on or change different aspects of different sensors. So in my case, I want to turn on Excel power for channels 1, 5, and 6 because these are all IEPE sensors. To do this, I select channel 1, and then hold the control key and select 5 and 6 as well. And then if I hit the Excel power button, it will turn on Excel power for all those. In my case, these sensors are also TEDS sensors, meaning they have a data sheet with all the information on it, such as sensitivity and serial number. And I don't want to type in the sensitivities manually. First, I'll show you turning on TEDS for just one sensor. If you click this TEDS checkbox, it will put a little plus icon on the left side of the columns. If you open up that, it will give you a Read TEDS button. Click that, and it should show you all the data sheet information that's available. You can then apply that TEDS data, and it will put in the sensitivity, serial number, everything on that data sheet that is applicable to the sensor. However, in this case, I'm going to show you that this multi-select also works with TEDS. And to do that, first let's fully select TEDS for all those, and it's checked off as you can see. But now, if we go to Read All TEDS on the bottom left, click that, and it will open up the TEDS datasheet information for all 3 of the sensors. And then if we click Apply All TEDS, that will apply all the datasheet information to all 3 sensors. Another thing you can do is disable channels that aren't being used. In my case, I only am using 3 sensors out of 20 channels. So if I hit these checkboxes on the left, I showed you a control select to select more specific channels. However, if I want to get rid of this checkbox on channels 7 through 20, if I simply hold the Shift button and click the bottom one, it will select all the ones in between, and I can simply click that checkbox and it will get rid of all of them. One thing to note is that there is also a copy and paste feature within this window. So let's say I have channels 10, 11, and 12 hooked up to 4 sensors. And let's say we want to make this a force pound value. If we copy, right click and select copy, and then select these 2 channels. If I right click and select paste, it will paste in those force pound values. However, I can change those back. Another feature about this input configuration window is the tags column. Let's say in our case, channel 1 is connected to an engine, while channels 5 and 6 are on a strut part. We can add those tags appropriately, and then we can actually use these tags as filters, which I'll show off later in the traces pane. Another thing you can do is, in my case, let's say I want to use tags a lot more. I don't want to scroll over every time. So what you can do is actually drag these columns to where you want. So in my case, let's put it right next to the TEDS column. In these changes that you make, this tags column, for example, when I leave the software and reopen it later, this configuration should stay the same. So this tags column will be in this location. Let's apply those settings. The last feature I want to show off about this input configuration column is how you can load and save configurations. So in my case, let's say I want to make sure that this setup doesn't get changed or anything like that. I can save this configuration. Let's just call it release 2025.2. Then select save, and that will save in this ObserVIEW resources configuration file path. Click save. And then if I were to make some changes to it and click apply, if I go to load configuration, open this back up, it changes it back to how it was. So let's apply those settings again, go back to what we want them to be, click OK. So you may have noticed in the background while I was messing with those input settings, you could see this channel readings pane changing. This is something that was a request from some customers. What this channel readings pane does is it gives you a rough status of each channel. If you hover over these different bars, you can get a max, a min reading, as well as an RMS and a bias offset reading on each of your sensors to give you a rough indication of whether your sensors are doing what they're supposed to do in the range they're supposed to be. And so let's just say one of my sensors or one of my cables comes loose. Let's just do channel 6. I'm going to disconnect it. As you can see, it goes completely red and yellow, and it shows that it's completely out of range of what it's supposed to be based on the input settings. If I plug it back in, it goes back to green and starts to settle back where it's supposed to be, and you can see that everything's back how it's supposed to be. Another feature of this channel readings pane is this is where you can set the sample rate as well as the averaging time for this RMS reading. So anywhere from half a second to 10 seconds. And you can type in a custom value as well. The next pane that I want to go over is the traces pane. In this pane, we added a new feature, that's the filters. As you can see, there's a little filters button right here. If you click that and click add filter, it will give me, in my case, I only have 3 selections. If I had different axes, let's say I had some tri-X sensors in there, and there were some X, Y, and Z sensors, axis would show up in there, and I'd be able to sort by axis. In my case, let's just look at the tags that I made. If I click tags and then select tags, I can see that those custom engine and strut tags are here. So let's say I only want to look at the sensor that was on the engine. I click engine, and it gets rid of channels 5 and 6 that had that strut tag on. This is going to be really helpful for those really high channel count systems where you have a lot of sensors hooked to a lot of different places. You can use that tag feature to sort where each sensor is, and then you can use this filter feature with that tags feature to narrow down what you want to see and get rid of what you don't want to see. Another thing to note is when I had disabled those channels, you can notice that it got rid of them in this selection. So it only is showing the enabled channels.